What if a simple clown costume wasn't just a costume, but a curse? A desperate father stumbles upon an old suit to save his son's birthday party. But once he puts it on, something terrifying happens. The costume won't come off. Day by day, his body begins to change. His voice twists into something inhuman, and an ancient hunger awakens inside him. On the day of her son Jack's birthday, a woman named Meg decides to throw a clown-themed party, because even though he's little, Jack is obsessed with clowns. To make the party special, Meg hires a professional clown. But when the celebration has already started, the clown calls to say he won't be able to make it. Not knowing what else to do, Meg calls her husband Kent, a real estate agent who is currently fixing up one of their houses. When Kent hears the clown isn't coming, he searches for a costume that will fit. Inside the house, he finds an old trunk containing a complete clown outfit. Without thinking much of it, Kent puts it on to save the party and entertain his son. After the celebration, Kent tucks Jack into bed and goes to the sofa to talk with his wife. Excited, Meg asks him to take off the costume, telling him she has a big surprise to share. But Kent dozes off before she returns. The next morning, Meg wakes him up in a rush, saying Jack is already late for school. Kent insists on removing the costume first, but Meg tells him there's no time. He'll have to wear it to his meeting. In the bathroom, Kent tries scrubbing his face, but the makeup won't come off. With no other choice, he takes Jack to school and then heads to one of his properties. There, he meets the workers removing the carpet. Since no one recognizes him dressed as a clown, he introduces himself, then hurries to the bathroom to try again. But no matter how hard he scrubs, the makeup stays. Panicking, he tries to remove the wig and red nose, but they won't budge. Even worse, when he tries to tear off the suit, it feels fused to his skin. Desperate, Kent grabs a blade and cuts at the fabric, but only manages to slice open his own wrist. After bandaging the wound, he picks up a small chainsaw, pressing it against his chest in a reckless attempt to cut the costume off. But the only result is a broken saw. Frustrated and exhausted, Kent returns home. Meg is shocked to see him still dressed as a clown. He explains everything, but she doesn't believe him until she tries to pull off the fake nose. It's wedged so tightly that when she finally rips it off, it tears away a piece of flesh. As Kent screams in agony, their dog runs over and eats the bloody nose. To make matters worse, Meg realizes the wig isn't a wig at all. It has become Kent's real hair. Hearing the commotion, Jack walks into the bathroom. Meg quickly leaves Kent to take their son back to bed. Meanwhile, Kent goes to the hospital, where a doctor bandages his nose wound. Back at home, Kent begins to feel an unbearable hunger. No matter how much cake or food he eats, his stomach keeps growling. The next morning, Meg wakes to find the kitchen ransacked, with a note from Kent saying he's gone to figure out what's happening to him. He returns to the house where he found the costume and calls his secretary to look up the property records. While waiting, he notices that the trunk where the clown suit had been stored was chained shut. Deciding not to wait, he checks the documents himself. At a cafe, Kent reads that the previous homeowner, Martin Carlson, has died. As he's trying to process this, he notices a child nearby. The sight makes his stomach growl even louder, despite the fact he's already eaten multiple meals. Confused and frightened, Kent visits a Halloween costume store and gets the phone number of someone who shares the same surname as Martin. Calling the man, Kent explains that he wants to talk about the clown costume. But to his surprise, the man on the other end becomes terrified, begging Kent not to touch the suit. When Kent reveals that he is already wearing it, the man immediately invites him over and gives him his address. After driving for some time, the realtor arrives at the house and meets Herbert Bert Carlson, the brother of the former owner. After introducing himself, Bert offers Kent a cup of tea and begins to explain the origins of the costume. He reveals that he and his late brother had once discovered the outfit, which was never just a costume, but something much darker. Curious, Kent asks how to remove it. Instead of answering directly, Bert tells him the legend of the Cloyne, a creature with pale white skin and a red nose that once lived in the icy mountains. To survive, it lured 5 children into its cave each year, devouring one for every winter month. Over time, the story was forgotten, and the terrifying demon was turned into the figure of fun that children now adore, the clown. As Bert speaks, Kent suddenly begins to feel dizzy. Confused, he asks why Bert is telling him all of this, but before he can get an answer, he blacks out. When Kent wakes, he finds himself tied up. Bert explains that the tea was supposed to keep him unconscious much longer, and admits there's only one way to stop the demon, by cutting the body apart piece by piece. Horrified, Kent panics. As Bert prepares his cleaver, Kent breaks free just in time, but not before the blade slices deep into his shoulder. Enraged, Kent yanks the cleaver from his flesh and hurls it back, then tackles Bert and wrestles the gun from him. Pointing the revolver, Kent demands to know what Bert was planning. The old man replies that it isn't a costume at all. It's the demon's skin. Shaken and confused, Kent drives home and tells Meg what happened, insisting she call the police. He shows her the wound on his shoulder and warns her that Bert believes he's turning into a monster. Desperate, he begs her not to tell anyone else, fearing people will think he's insane. But without realizing it, Meg's family has overheard everything from the living room. Skeptical, Meg's father demands proof. Kent leads them outside, where Bert is tied up in his car. To the others, it looks as though Kent has kidnapped an innocent old man. Thinking it's all just a twisted joke, Meg's brother grabs Kent's clown wig, only to discover it won't come off. In his panic, Kent lashes out and breaks the man's arm, horrifying Meg and Jack, who watch from the window. Not wanting to traumatize his family any further, Kent decides to leave. He takes Bert with him, intending to drive to the police station. But on the way, his transformation worsens. His fingers and toes elongate grotesquely. Terrified, Bert lunges forward and tightens a pair of handcuffs around Kent's throat, causing the car to swerve and crash into a wall. When the dust settles, Kent emerges from the wreck completely unharmed. He drags the injured Bert out of the car and demands to know why he's trying to kill him. Bert, bleeding and weak, insists that Kent must take his own life before the demon fully consumes him. Then he collapses. Just then, Kent notices 2 children in a car that has stopped to help. His stomach growls violently, his vision blurs, and he enters a nightmarish hallucination. Terrified of what he might do, Kent flees into the forest. At a nearby campsite, a young boy carries a dish to wash when he hears the sound of growling. He turns and sees Kent, who asks if he has anything to eat. Innocently, the boy pulls a cookie from his pocket and offers it to the stranger. But as he steps closer, Kent snaps, grabbing the boy's arm and biting off his fingers in one savage gulp. The next morning, Meg visits Jack's school and begs the principal not to allow Kent to pick him up. After saying goodbye to her son, she leaves. But Jack's classmate Colton sees Meg kiss him on the cheek, and soon Jack becomes the target of bullies. Meanwhile, after tasting human flesh for the first time, Kent realizes his normal teeth are falling out, replaced by sharp, monstrous fangs. Horrified, he isolates himself, hiding inside one of his vacant houses. When he unlocks the door, he's greeted by a boy who innocently tries to chat with him. Kent's stomach growls louder, but he forces himself to resist, begging the boy to leave. Locking himself inside, he sits against the door, trembling as he fights his hunger. At home, Meg struggles to control the family dog, which has gone feral ever since eating Kent's bloody clown nose. Suddenly, she receives a phone call. "It's Kent," His voice is broken, apologizing for everything that's happening. He tells her there's only one way out, then hangs up, leaving Meg shaken with dread. Inside the house, Kent puts the revolver to his head and pulls the trigger. He collapses instantly, but moments later, his eyes open again, alive, unscathed, as if nothing happened. Realizing death won't release him, Kent heads to a construction supply store. He buys saws, blades, and other tools, preparing for a desperate and gruesome attempt to free himself from the demon's skin. Meg decides to go after her husband, checking several of his properties to see where he might be hiding. Meanwhile, Kent prepares a desperate plan. He rigs up a brutal contraption, two saws facing each other, and places a chair between them, intending to fall headfirst into the blades. For a long time, he sits there trying to summon the courage. But when he finally tips forward, he slips sideways instead, crashing into the saws and knocking them over. Once again, he comes out completely unscathed. At that moment, the young boy who had followed him earlier enters the house to check if he's okay. But a piece of the broken blade flies off, striking the child. The boy collapses lifeless to the floor. Horrified, Kent feels an overwhelming wave of guilt. But soon, his stomach growls louder than ever. Giving in to the hunger, he devours the child, his first full and grotesque meal. Moments later, Meg arrives at the house. Hearing her unlock the door, Kent panics and begs her not to come in. Trying to calm him, Meg tells him she believes him and just wants to take him home. When Kent still refuses, she pleads with him, finally revealing her secret. She's pregnant. That was the surprise she had meant to tell him on the night he put on the costume. Shaken, Kent finally opens the door. Meg hugs him, unaware of the bones of the boy lying hidden in the basement. He begs her to chain him up, warning her not to let him out under any circumstances. After securing her husband, Meg searches for answers. She looks through Bert's book and finds an old newspaper clipping about the Carlson brothers, with a photograph of Bert himself dressed in the clown costume. Hoping to understand how he removed it, she visits Bert in the hospital. Since he can't speak, Bert writes on a notepad, asking where Kent is, insisting he's the only one who can stop him. When Meg refuses to answer, Bert becomes frantic, scribbling a warning not to trust Kent. Desperate, Meg shows him the photo she found, demanding an explanation. But the image only agitates him further, and the nurse throws her out. Determined, Meg drives to the house where Kent originally discovered the suit. There, she finds a video camera pointed at a chair with handcuffs. As she watches the old recordings, she sees footage of someone thrashing violently in the clown costume, and a doctor wheeling the restrained figure away. Meanwhile, at school, Jack is still upset about his father. Colton and the other boys spot him crying and begin to tease him. Colton smears glue on his hand, threatening to rub it on Jack's face. Enraged, Jack bites his hand and runs away from school before dismissal. After sprinting across town, Jack arrives home early and calls out for his mom. Instead, he hears his father's voice. Kent, still chained in the basement, calls to him, asking if Meg is around. Naively, Jack goes downstairs and finds his father bound to the wall. Believing he's still the same man, Jack approaches, venting about the bullies at school. He explains how Colton tried to smear glue on his face, not realizing the monster sitting in front of him is no longer his dad. Back at the Carlson house, Meg reviews another tape of someone dressed in the clown suit, flailing uncontrollably. A doctor wheels the struggling figure away in a chair, confirming the horrifying truth. She takes the camera with her. Just then, she gets a call from her friend, the one who was supposed to pick Jack up from school. Confused, Meg insists she arrived on time, but when she looked for him, Jack was already gone. Panic strikes. Realizing her son could be in the basement with Kent, Meg rushes home. Thankfully, she finds Jack in the living room unharmed, but fear grips her. She asks why he left school early and if he's seen his father. Elsewhere, Colton plays Halo online with his friends. Suddenly, he notices someone lurking behind him in the room. Alarmed, he warns his friends that there's an intruder and grabs a nunchaku to defend himself. Searching the house, he discovers Kent standing in the shadows. Confused, Colton lowers his guard, asking if Jack is with him. One of Colton's friends on the call mentions the glue incident, confirming that Colton had bullied Jack and even planned to beat him up the next day. Hearing this, Kent snaps. He leaps onto Colton, biting deep into his neck and tearing him apart. In a frenzy, he rips out the boy's heart and hurls it against the television. Back at home, Meg hurriedly packs a bag, planning to flee with her son. But before she can leave, the family dog, corrupted after eating Kent's nose, breaks loose, snarling and vicious. The possessed animal lunges at her. Just as it's about to strike, Bert arrives and kills the dog. In shock, Meg collapses and Bert comforts her. He finally reveals the full truth. Years ago, he discovered the costume by accident in a shipment from Iceland. It was in perfect condition, better than any item he had ever seen. Before selling it to a circus, Bert decided to wear it himself, dressing as a clown to entertain sick children at the hospital where his brother worked. But soon, his transformation began. Terrified, his brother Martin promised to find a cure. Bert blacked out, and when he finally woke days later, the costume was gone and the curse was broken. He later learned that Martin had been the one to wear it. To satisfy the demon, Martin kidnapped 5 terminally ill children from the hospital, sacrificing one for every winter month. Once fed, the demon released him, and Bert was freed from the suit. Ever since, Bert has been searching for a permanent way to destroy it. Meg refuses to believe that Kent would ever kill a child, but Bert shows her proof: the severed fingers of the Boy Scout Kent had attacked. Realizing she cannot deny it any longer, Meg asks where her husband is. At that moment, Jack blurts out that Kent went to Colton. With dread sinking in, Meg rushes Jack to her father's house for safety. Then, without giving any further explanation, she drives off into the night. At Colton's house, the pair arrive and find no sign of Kent, only the boy's partially devoured body. Thinking of possible places where he could be, Meg remembers there is a Chuck E. Cheese nearby and decides to look for him there. When they arrive, Meg asks Bert to wait in the car and promises to bring her husband to him. Inside the restaurant, a boy enters the tunnel toy looking for his younger brother. As he crawls around, he finds a section smeared with blood and handprints, but he still doesn't feel afraid and continues searching. Following the bloody tunnel, the boy finds Kent, now fully possessed, trying to devour his brother. Horrified, the older boy distracts the clown so his younger brother can escape, but he ends up being devoured instead. His blood flows down the slide, alerting the other families, who panic and run in terror. Amid the chaos, Meg keeps searching for her husband when she is suddenly pulled into the kitchen by Bert. He shows her blood marks on the floor and tells her to follow them, which leads her straight to Kent. Confused, Bert asks what happened, and Meg explains that they are there to help. While they talk, Bert suddenly appears with an axe and tries to chop Kent's head off, causing Kent to fully revert into his possessed form. Enraged, the former stockbroker knocks Bert down and almost devours him, but Meg manages to stop him by begging him not to. For some reason, the demon listens. He tells Meg that there is only one child left and warns that she must give him one, or else Jack will be his final prey. Just then, the police arrive. Meg flees the restaurant, leaving Bert behind to be captured as the main suspect. Outside, she calls her father and begs him to run away with Jack. As her father asks what's going on, Meg notices a lost child. She ends the call and approaches the boy, but just as she gets close, his mother appears and hugs him. Confused and desperate, Meg returns to her car. As she listens to the radio, a girl knocks on her window asking for a ride. Not wanting to waste the chance, Meg agrees and starts driving. When the girl falls asleep, Meg heads toward the designated place. Upon arrival, she wakes the girl and asks her to get out of the car, but the girl panics and starts banging on the window, begging to be let back in. As Meg begins to regret her actions, a policeman arrives and tells her to wait while he speaks to the girl. Puzzled, Meg wonders why the demon hasn't appeared. She suddenly realizes the truth. He must have gone after Jack. Racing back into town, she tries calling her father, but he doesn't answer. Fearing the worst, she heads to her house. There, Meg meets her father and begins to explain what's happening. But before she can finish, the clown bursts in and rips the old man's jaw off in a single blow. Horrified, Meg watches her father die before her eyes. She runs to the garage, grabs a sledgehammer, and prepares to fight. As she waits, Jack starts coming down the stairs. Meg frantically signals for him to go back up. Just then, the lumbering beast appears and takes a sledgehammer to the face, but he quickly recovers. The hooded clown disarms Meg and pins her leg against the car, attempting to rip the unborn baby from her womb. Desperate, Meg screams for Jack to run. Jack rushes to the locked exit and hides under the stairs. The bloodthirsty demon stalks him, but Meg intervenes, stabbing the monster repeatedly. She slashes its neck, but it's not enough. In retaliation, the clown tears a chunk out of her shoulder and throws her against a cupboard, leaving her unconscious. The demon resumes searching for Jack and eventually finds his hiding place. But the space is too small for him to reach, so he retreats. Believing he's safe, Jack tries to escape, only for the clown to reappear and block the exit with bricks. With no way out, the demon smashes the ladder and tries to grab Jack from above. Just in time, Meg regains consciousness and fastens a chain around the creature's neck. Struggling to reach Jack, the monster nearly rips its own head off, weakening itself. Meg seizes the chance, grabs the sledgehammer, and prepares to strike. Suddenly, Kent's voice emerges from within the demon, pleading for help. Believing she can still save him, Meg tells Jack to fetch the book and more chains. But Jack refuses, insisting that the thing before them is not his father. Realizing it's hopeless, the demon lunges once more. Meg delivers a devastating sledgehammer blow, severing its head in a gush of multicolored blood. Relieved, she hugs her son and apologizes. But the nightmare isn't over. The demon's severed head grabs Jack's leg. Summoning all her strength, Meg rips out the last nerve endings by hand, finally destroying the monster. Its body dissolves, leaving behind only Kent's head and the cursed costume. Afterward, the police investigate the trail of horrific crimes. They seize all of Kent's belongings, including the clown's suit, which is placed into storage. So, what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time!